And now, the lowdown, with economist and political strategist Elson Low.
What triggered the parliamentarians, the main opposition parliamentarians, to do that?
Well, there were a couple of very worrisome developments around that time. The first being that the NRF Act, which is the act that's going to govern, hundreds of billions of US, that the government attempted to push the act through after only about 2 weeks of the public having access to this act. And as a result, you saw, I believe even the GCCI saying that they need more time to review the act. The reason being that when you're dealing with that amount of money, you cannot be, 2 weeks is absurd. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there were a number of safeguards in the act that were put into the act, and I myself called it an abomination, which were removed. One of those safeguards that it's not talked about enough is that there was supposed to be a committee of economists to evaluate how much we could spend in the Guyanese economy without causing inflation and various other effects. That has been completely removed, and it's now at the discretion really of any government to spend as they like, and we have to hope that we don't see runaway inflation. That's one key thing. Okay. The other thing is that there were several, regarding the Oversight Committee, there were several groups in that Oversight Committee that were removed. And really in the days leading up to the legislation being passed, I was calling various civil society groups, University of Guyana as an example, to say, listen, your representatives will be removed. Yeah. And this is a concern because really we want to ensure that as many of, when it comes to legal society, the accounting society, there were representatives across the social spectrum in Guyana that were supposed to be there to help to provide some transparency regarding this act. Now, they were removed, of course, they were replaced by some religious leaders and so on. And while, of course, I understand the contribution that religious leaders can have, I thought that was kind of strange. That's the first thing. The second thing is really removing University of Guyana representatives and so on from the act, I think kind of hobbled the ability for us to see within the governance of the institution itself, some reasoned research being presented regularly to those who are governing this institution. Some of your viewers may recall that for the Oversight Committee of the new Act, the opposition had nominated me to be one of the people there to provide oversight. Of course, the government would never want to see me there. But the point is, we as a country are not accustomed to dealing with hundreds of billions of US. And so when we're dealing with that, we have to have mechanisms that, first of all, provide accountability and transparency, and second of all, ensure that we're keeping a close eye on some of the ills that can come from a sovereign wealth fund. Okay. And now, and I'm sure we'll get into it, there are some serious concerns regarding the investing of the funds, because the experience of other countries with their sovereign wealth funds, developing nations, has not been good. And money has gone missing. All
right. Let's not divulge. You see, I want to understand a little bit, and we know how Parliament is set up. PPP have a majority in Parliament, which make up the government. The main opposition then has 31 seats, and then there's the third parties, which then the joinder, which has 1 seat. All right. What we understand about Parliament, just as more of an education for everyone, is that with a majority Parliament, much like APNU had in the previous term, any law can be passed that they see fit. Yeah, sure. All right? Obviously, the only thing that can't happen is constitutional reform until they have 2/3.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So we have a situation here where, I'm going to be very frank with you, you have a two-pronged issue that I found with that entire scenario. The first one was that you have a change of the laws that were coming that obviously people had their questions about.
Yeah.
And then you had the main opposition, I don't want to say overreact, because I understand their sense of urgency,
Well,
but at the same time, obviously it would have taken away from the meat of the issue. You know, when you create that kind of ruckus in an institution like Parliament, obviously people completely pass over what the actual issue was.
Listen.
It's kind of like a riot on the street, where all of a sudden you're now worried about the looting and the burning of buildings, but you ain't even talking anymore about why they're looting and burning buildings.
Part of the value of civil disobedience, and of course we even pointed out that Cherry Dragon in his day had taken the mace as well, is to draw attention to the issue.
Right.
And I think a lot of people who might not even have been thinking about this, their attention was attracted to the fact that something is going on with the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And I think that kind of kicked off, if only without people realizing it, a culture of awareness and concern around oil and the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And so while, of course, we were not able to get a delay in the passage of the law, but we were able to attract attention to the issue. So that is one of the main, one of the things you're aiming for with civil disobedience is to attract attention to issues.
Well, I hear you, but you know, I'm going to be inclined to disagree, because funny enough, I agreed with why it was happening. I agreed that the laws that were being changed by the PPP, removing those safeguards, you know, to protect the sovereign wealth fund, to direct and ensure that spending was accountable and transparent. I hear you, but at the same time, you also came off the heels of the 2020 election, in which more drama than anybody can possibly even imagine ended up looking at this more drama and saying, well, we ain't able with this no
You
more.
recall that I said that
So trust wasn't there.
I called some of the people who were being removed from the Sovereign Wealth Fund. No reaction.
Say again.
I
Explain that.
called some of the people whose representatives were being removed. I always remember calling University in Ghana to say, your representative is about to be removed, you need to say something. And they never said anything.
Well, you got to remember, but at the same time,
sometimes it's important to draw attention to issues that people are asleep on.
I'm with you. I'm here and I'm with you on that.
And that's not the University of Guyana. I don't want to say that it's the Executive University of Guyana. It's the Student Society Executive, the head. I called him on multiple occasions to say, you are being removed, you need to say something, you'll be left out.
Yeah.
Did he say anything?
All right, let me ask a question. No, I hear you. And at that time, I will say I think people are finding their voice a little bit more now as they see what's going on in the country. Sure. But nonetheless, I guess the burning question when it comes to these types of particular issues is, I'm gonna get political, as far as the political atmosphere in the country goes. What do you think needs to happen for society to build back trust in APNU?
For society to build back
after the 2020 election, obviously.
Well, I think what's important to recognize is we have a judicial system in this country. We have constitutional processes, and those processes are playing out. We haven't seen the country up in flames or anything like that. You've seen protests, but they've been orderly protests. And so I think maybe that is a concern that's a little bit overblown. What I would say is, what we need to do is, one, to respect the judiciary, but two, to help the political class to understand that without an independent judiciary, you will have conflicts boil up.
Right.
And so we shouldn't be hearing, as an example, the Vice President talking about judges' decisions and using a tone that is not appropriate. We should rather be respecting the decision of the court and saying, all right, we disagree, we're going to go to the next stage. And to that end, I think that Guyanese, many may have expected burn down in the streets and so on, but I think that those expectations have proved unfounded. All
right. Well, here I can get into the meat of things now. All right, because I have you here, and I would like a different perspective on quite a few of these situations, and I think the public would like to hear what the main opposition side of things are on a few. I'm going to ask our technical team to bring up. So, for example, one of the articles in the news recently was the Public Accounts Committee. I'll hope they can bring it up here. The Public Accounts Committee today dragged the National Drainage and Irrigation Authority (NDIA) over the course due to its failure. Sorry, the course due to its failure to submit its financial statements for 2022. All right. Hopefully the technical team can bring that up soon. All right. What's interesting is statutorily, government agencies are expected to submit their financial statements to the audit office by the end of February. However, the NDIA is among 8 statutory bodies under the Ministry of Agriculture that have failed to submit their financials.
Yeah.
And here is the key part. I'm hoping it can come up on the screen soon. Here's the key part. Most of these 8 statutory bodies failed to present their statements since 2015. Now, everyone can have a read. So, my question, I guess I can read it again quickly while it's up on the screen before we talk. The Public Accounts Committee today dragged the national NDIA over the documents due to its failure to submit its financial statements for 2022. Good.
Now, one of the things I hope that you recognize is that
in opposition, particularly, did not submit their financials.
Government, then I would ask a couple of questions because we have the PNC. It's because the party changes.
Okay.
Right? The mere fact you have a young person like me that's able to have a voice and so on, that's indicative.
Good.
Then if you look at the policies of the party, they have changed over the years. When it comes to the PVP, I struggle to understand how you could change anybody's mind in there. I struggle to understand because they have the same policies and approach that they have had for like 30 years now. They have come back with exactly the same style of governance. Okay. Whereas the PNC has changed. You've seen an entirely different economic structure come out of this new leader of the opposition. A completely different set of policies. I've been able to have a hand as a young person in that. And that really is ultimately the reason that I'm a member of the PNC. Because my voice is heard.
Okay.
PVP, whose voice is heard in PVP?
All right, let me ask a question now, because you and I actually said 2 words on it earlier before we came on camera. One of the issues that we currently have with the PPP, all right, and as any balanced, unbiased Guyanese will say, they gone in there and they power drunk. Okay, you can't hear from them anymore. You know, they running around taking pictures and hugging up people, and at the same time, everybody, the country is cost of living through the roof. The struggle is still there, crime rate through the roof. Organizations like public hospital, the schooling system, everything is where it was, and no real substance to the change that they're claiming.
Absolutely.
All right, but hold on. I will say, as I said to you earlier, I'll say it on camera. I didn't see any different when PNC was in power post 2015. The fact of the matter is, all the big boys gone in there. You know you can't reach them anymore. They start changing laws. They ain't answering calls. They're not talking to the people anymore. We gone right back to 2 governments that step into power and, as far as I'm concerned, believe they become God. And then stop caring about the people, fill their own pockets, and that's the end of that.
One distinction that is vital, and I think this is where a lot of modern Guyanese should pay attention, and civil society as well. I don't know why this PPP feels the need to do this, but they seem to really enjoy victimizing people and going after them. That is something.
Wait, hold on. I recall Ashney Singh and Brassington coming back in handcuffs.
Yeah,
but still not going to jail.
There was a court case. There were investigations that were done.
Right.
You know, it isn't that just because somebody may have said something that we don't like, we start to attack them and so on. Right. I think that has been one of the sad things that we've kind of observed under the PVP.
But what I'm trying to point to is the similarities. I can talk about Irfan Ali, 19 fraud charges.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not claiming anybody's innocence. But what I'm saying is the same victimization, because now you're watching the PPP with David Patterson, right? Charging him for as every single guy these man does, is man and woman is going to take, but
that's what I'm saying.
it shouldn't
That's a false
happen.
equivalence. Where yes, we understand that the law is the law, but I mean a big hoodoo over that, and 19 fraud charges, no hoodoo. The amount of money that's involved in these cases, no hoodoo. We have to kind of hold things in perspective. When was Vice President Jagdeo arrested by the police and put on bail over the allegations around Sue? And those are very serious allegations. In fact, those allegations are so serious that you can make an argument that one of the reasons Guyana developed, this is a hypothetical, is because of Sue, because it could be that all along a certain person who wears glasses and has a bald head was taking bribes from Sue. That is an argument that could be made, but we don't know the truth because we haven't seen an investigation. Was he ever interviewed by the police? Was Vice President Jagdeo ever interviewed at length by the police?
Mm-hmm.
Was he ever put under scrutiny?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I hear you.
you're talking about the entire future of the country. You're talking about possibly 20 years worth of corruption allegations.
I hear you.
And the man was never interviewed by the police.
So I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna tell you you're absolutely right. I believe more needed to be investigated into that Sue matter, and I do believe that there is more to come on it. But what I will say again, as a Guyanese, that is not APNU and not PPP.
Sure.
I could say the same thing about the $21 million signing bonus that they thought was a gift. And don't get me wrong, I'm not about to sit here and dwell into the past, okay? As much as all PPP people want to hear me do that, I'm not about to do it. What I'm sitting here doing is showing you, just like in that article just now, which came out about a week ago, is that there is pure hypocrisy between PPP and APNU. As far as I'm concerned, they're the same thing. And I'm sitting here hearing, oh, we've changed, trust us this time. I heard PPP tell me that pre-2020, and we are back to square one. Okay, as much as people want to sit, I can tell you an analogy, all right?
Sure.
And this is what, it's just as to trying to simplify it as much as
Sure.
I can. I had another guest of mine a little while ago sit, and we were discussing similar things of the PPP and PNC being similar. And he said, what we have a problem with in this country is us trying to pick the lesser of two evils, all right? And don't get me wrong, politics is politics.
Yeah, well,
everything will happen.
Politics has
is
been
politics.
defined as picking the lesser of two evils.
I hear you. But as my friend said, he said, if I walk into a restaurant and I order 2 bowls of soup, all right? And this bowl of soup, they bring the 2 bowls of soup, all right? And this one they say got 99% cow dung in it, and this one got 98% cow dung in it. I can be honest with you, as a Guyanese, as anybody, as a citizen of this country, I don't like soup with any cow dung in it. All right. So the fact of the matter is, I don't accept any of these two bowls of soup. So my question again is, how is it that we have had a history dating back of since independence of only these two parties running this country, and we end up back with articles just like we saw there of no accountability or transparency. And when one is in government, when APNU is in government, it's the same thing. Now PPP in government, up to 2022, NDIA, no documents. How are the people to understand that there's going to be change?
But there is one difference, which is that I seem to recall a lot of the faces under the 23 years PPP was in office being the same faces here today. They were removed from office. Where was the accountability? Why didn't we see some heads roll? Whereas with the PNC specifically and APNU more generally, you've seen change. It is a party where if you produce poor policies, if you produce poor performance, you're removed. And there are several leaders who have been removed. You know? Now, I'm fortunate to have survived across 2 leaders, so I don't know if that says something about what I'm saying. But the point being that there's accountability when it comes to the APNU, even if you consider there's much more that's required. There's no accountability to the PPP. And I want to make a broader point.
Go ahead.
Which is that I think there's a legacy kind of totalitarian approach that maybe was there from the communist days that has carried forward, where you can't challenge the center. Everybody is expected to just toe the line.
Yeah.
And so that perhaps has been suppressing within the PPP any dissent over the years. Because I cannot understand that you could lose office really twice, right? Be out of office for a minority government and then lose proper. And not reform and not change your faces, your main faces.
I hear ya.
That's like amazing.
I give you a chance to your argument. So I'm gonna bring up another article here. I'm gonna ask our technical team to please bring up. So the government wants CCJ to settle the law on decisions to oust parliamentary secretaries from the National Assembly. There's the article, and I hopefully they can just you can just scroll up and give me the wording underneath so I can read it, and the public can see it as well. It says, more than a year after Guyana's Chief Justice Roxanne George ruled that members of Parliament cannot be elected and non-elected members at the same time, the appeal court has upheld this ruling. This decision has in effect rendered as unlawful the appointment of these 2 parliamentary secretaries by President Irfan Ali. But hours after the appeal court ruling, was delivered on Tuesday, Attorney General Anil Nandala signaled that the government's intention to further appeal the matter to the Caribbean Court of Justice. There you have it up there. Now, I am just going to draw again a very interesting likeness between the PNC and the PPP, and I'd like you to, by any means, give me your take on it.
Sure.
I have a situation here where I recall after the no confidence motion, the APNU brought about the notion that it is constitutionally illegal for dual citizens to be sitting in Parliament, although both sides had dual citizens sitting in Parliament. Now, these are matters to me when I look at a situation like that and like this ruling here, that obviously is being used out of convenience, as there clearly is hypocrisy on both sides when it comes to, again, you brought up the court system, stating, when I'm in government, get to make all the decisions. And when that independent body of the judiciary, as you mentioned, makes a ruling that is not in your favor, they get highly upset and challenge it all the way to the CCJ, waste everybody taxpayers' money, and keep running on.
I think we got to differentiate between two things here. One is, listen, either side is entitled to challenge things in court if they think there's been an error of law. Okay? But the other side, I would say, and this is especially with regard to the dual citizenship issue, is it seems that because Guyana has such a large diaspora, this was an issue which wasn't really considered seriously by any side before then. However, I think because there was a lot of controversy around Charna's leaving, that I think inflamed the issue, specifically because it created this idea that you could come and cause chaos and then not have to, to explain yourself. And in fact, I believe that Mr. Charnas was asked as to whether or not he received a bribe, and he said, "So what if I was paid?" Which, well, I don't know that he was paid or not. I just found that to be like a very stunning answer. And so I think that situation really inflamed a dynamic which we as a country had not dealt seriously with. And I will say the issue of the diaspora is still one that we haven't fully engaged on. One simple example being, once Guyanese have left these shores, have moved, there's controversy around them, coming back to vote, and there are different positions on that. Of course.
Well, but positions on the Constitution are very different things.
No, but what I mean is,
I just want to know why you think that both sides are comfortable blatantly breaking the law, blatantly because it fits them at that time, much like the PPP here. Are blatantly breaking the law. Chief Justice Roxanne George, okay, obviously, in my opinion, probably the most respected legal professional in this country, after everything that has occurred, all right, probably the one lone voice of rational thinking, is being challenged here by the Attorney General, all the way up to the CCJ, and as I'm sure you're happily about to point out, this is not the first time that the government is challenging her decisions. Although they didn't challenge anything when it came to the election saga, when she made all the rulings in favor of the PPP because in following her interpretation of the law. The fact of the matter is, we are back to the hypocrisy of watching these two organizations do the same thing every time they go into power.
Well, like I said,
I want to know how PNC is doing anything different now.
We do need there does need to be space for where there is a serious disagreement over a matter of law. Okay. And I think in some areas there is. I'll give you an example of something that is absurd. The High Court ruling that when it comes to a parent company guarantee, that was supposed to be provided, and the government challenging the High Court's ruling against the interests of Guyana. That I think shocked everybody. Okay. But where there is, where I don't think that we should always ascribe to political parties on either side that they never are serious in their positions. They are from time to time serious in their positions. What I would say is, separate from that, we have to judge what their motives are, right? I think that's where we have to take a second look. And when it comes to that parent company guarantee, I think that's where it exposed the PPP's motives, because if you're going to have a court rule in favor of you having more environmental coverage of a safer Guyana in the event of an oil spill, for you to go out of your way to try and reduce the coverage and to put Guyana in a more vulnerable position betrayed their intentions. And that, I think, is why so many people were alarmed by that.
Okay, I hear you. Well, let's not shift too far off topic. But what I'm going to do is, we can discuss, PPP, PNC back and forth.
Sure.
But I'd like to bring up a topic now in which I think is a little bit closer to your expertise. All right, and that is the oil industry.
Sure.
Now, I want, this is an article that just came out. It is a quote by Vice President Barry Jagdeo, stating that, basically stating that the opposition shouting from the sidelines. Jagdeo criticizes opposition's failure to help manage oil fund. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this article just quickly for everyone watching. Vice President Dr. Barra Jagdeo criticized the APNU AFC parliamentary opposition for its failure to effectively participate in the management of Guyana's natural resource fund. Jagdeo, at a press conference held at Freedom House in Georgetown, acknowledged that Guyana's 2021 Natural Resource Fund Act requires a nominee of the opposition leader to be on the fund's investment committee. In August 2022, Finance Executive Shaliza Shaw was appointed as chairperson of the investment committee. Michael Monroe, Richard Rambran are other members. I'm not sure whether he mentioned that, but I'd like you to tell me now.
Sure.
Why it is that Jagdeo would make a comment like this with regard to the opposition.
I want to make 2 points. One is that the Vice President is trying to peddle this idea that the opposition has not been effective when it comes to oil and gas issues. But there are several issues over the course of the last year where we have literally forced the PPP to take a step back, starting with the audit, which the PPP was not going to conduct of the offshore oil expenses, which is unbelievable, and I said should be a criminal offense.
I agree with you. I'm aware of that situation.
Yeah,
and I know it was through your guys' push. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
That is one example. Another example is the funding of the gas ashore pipeline from Cost Oil, which we again said is something that we will look to challenge if they go ahead with it, because it is a violation of the Constitution, because you're spending money before it gets to the Parliament. A couple of weeks after we raised that, the oil company announced that that's not going to be an arrangement anymore. I even recall the Vice President saying, when I said that they need to bring down the price of gasoline as it spiked due to the war in Ukraine, that it was, I think it was cake shop economics. A couple of months later, the Minister of Finance was announcing that the government is going to be lowering the price of oil, the price of gasoline and guy oil. So they tried to paint this narrative, but it is not true, and those who are paying close attention will see that we often will stop them in their tracks. That's the first thing. Now, the second thing is, regards this sovereign wealth fund issue, as regards...
Is there a member appointed by the main opposition?
We were challenging this law based off of what we believe to be the illegal passage of the law. That challenge has been thrown out recently.
Very recently.
And so
a week or two ago,
we're evaluating our next steps regarding this particular law. However...
But I don't understand, why can you not comply and still challenge?
Well, we're getting there. Earlier, you'll recall that I was the person that was put forward to be on the oversight committee, and they said no, they don't want me there on the oversight committee. Now, that shows that when it comes to oversight, we're willing to put forward people. But when it comes to ensuring that this particular committee is dealt with, we thought that we should wait until we actually have a judgment, because it might result in changes to the law. Now, to deal specifically with the investment committee, there's some things that we want to help Guyanese to understand, because the risks here, I don't think Guyanese have a grasp at all of the risks. Now, what has been observed with all the sovereign wealth funds in developing countries, Libya being the prime example, is that often when you're going to make investment decisions, the decisions are based on such complex financial information that people will not understand what is going on.
Right.
And so I worked with Goldman Sachs. I was in the belly of the beast. I have a good sense of finance. Goldman Sachs was embroiled in a controversy where the Libyans complained that they lost $1 billion US because they didn't understand what they were doing. So we have been very deliberate in saying, first of all, we're going to find someone who's appropriate, who has this knowledge, but also in putting in place mechanisms to inform that person so that when they're on the investment committee, they can identify these risks. We don't want a situation where you have Guyanese who are well-meaning, but maybe lack the experience or the exposure or the technical expertise. And what happened in Libya happens to us here, where we lose $1 billion and nobody can explain why it happened.
Mm-hmm.
So we've taken a deliberate approach. We've been gathering experts on the issue, and when we speak on it in terms of our final position, it will come from an understanding of how to deal with it such that the risks are mitigated.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just you put somebody there for the sake of putting somebody there. There's very serious risks that are associated with this.
But I hear you, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna challenge you a bit on this in the context of I don't understand again
Sure.
even in the political realm, why is it that you would want to hold back from having somebody, again, I'll use your words, in the belly of the beast, on the investment board, on the investment committee, to at least at bare minimum monitor what is occurring? That's what I'm confused about. I hear you're worrying, I hear what your concerns are, but at the same time, you're not even participating, and this is something I actually find interesting, and I will say it very clearly for the public to speak about, to understand. When APNU was in power, nobody from the PPP sat on any of the boards. Now that PPP are in power, nobody from APNU sitting on any of the boards. So why is it that we have these two political parties that have had equal chance to run this country, 25 years each, and still not work together in order, one, to do what's best for the Guyanese people, or at bare minimum, try to hold each other accountable?
Well, to be specific, as I said, we had a legal challenge against the act. And so, if only not to prejudice our own case, we were cautious.
It can't be to prejudice your own case. It's the law that you could sit on that board.
Yes.
How is it? Even if that person sit on there and says nothing.
If we are challenging the act, we're saying the act was not passed correctly.
Right.
Then it is a contradiction for us then to be going along as if everything is fine. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and this again is something to help the Guyanese public to understand. What has happened is, the funds have not been invested per se. They've been resting in the Federal Reserve Bank, and that's been earning interest. And so when we evaluated it, because the Federal Reserve has been increasing its interest rate and it's offered quite sharply in the past year or two, the Guyana government has been able to earn a lot of revenue from the interest. And so it is not that the country has been losing out, really, but rather that the country has been benefiting tremendously from the savings, from the interest rates, the interest that we're getting on the sovereign wealth fund. However, going forward, as I said, we've put together, and we're continuing to.
And my question will always boil back down to, why is it that you and again, PPP equally is guilty. Again, I point the fingers at both of y'all. Why is it that these two parties are not working together ever, at all? Why is it that every time one is in power, the other one does nothing to help the country, other than run them out from the sidelines?
Well, listen, in all fairness, we made submissions regarding the Local Content Act. Many of those submissions.
I just wanted to point out, I'm not agreeing with what Jagio said, because they're hypocrites when they think, because they were doing the same thing.
But the point that we're also trying to raise here is, we don't always come together to PPP to say, oh, kumbaya, we're going to work on. But where there are serious issues, we can force them to take the right actions. And I could name multiple issues, I've already named several on the show, where working with civil society, working along with other groups, working along with people who understand the seriousness of the issue, we can get a PPP to behave itself.
All right, let me throw something at you now. You represent the APNU. I'm going to give you a chance to campaign a little bit here. Cost of living. Everyone in this country is taking a hit. All right, everyone in this country is feeling the squeeze.
Yeah.
Put APNU back in power. What would they do about this?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we've put forward several proposals regarding the cost of living. First of all, we believe that we have to increase the productive capacity of farmers in this country. We talked about grants for them to buy equipment so that they can
I could have
expand their
systematically hit this though and tell you when y'all were in power, y'all had raised land fees, leasing fees, duties, and so on. I can tell you
but-
where I saw contradicting measures
Yeah, but the
being put in
first
place
thing,
when they had the
to
chance.
note is
Uh-huh.
agricultural production under the APNU
Mhm.
was very high. Rice production was high. Sugar production was much higher than it is right now. You know, so it's not that those sectors were not performing well or anything like that. But in addition to that, as we change, there are things that we like that we move forward with and things that we adjust. As it concerns the cost of living crisis, we've put forward specific proposals to help. We've even pointed out that last year, due to the war in Ukraine, we had a windfall oil price, unbelievably high oil prices, to the tune of, you know, I think this is $60 billion of unexpected revenue.
Right.
And we pointed out that's $300,000 per household.
Yeah.
Now, that money needed to have been used to cushion the cost of living. Because it makes no sense that you're benefiting as a country from the high oil price, but you're giving the average Guyanese the negatives and not allowing them to feel the benefits. So it is as if people are being punished when there's no reason for them to be punished. That is something that I don't understand. The government seems to so deaf to the cries of ordinary Guyanese. Even when you look at the amounts they do put aside directly for cost of living mitigation, $5 billion, not even 1% of the budget. The cost of living crisis we're going through, make no mistake, is the greatest cost of living crisis in the last 40 years, with inflation at 40-year highs last year and the year before. And the PVP doesn't seem to understand that this must be dealt with properly. One of the things I always find to be just annoying, when we had an issue with the Ukraine war with the interruption of wheat supplies, right? That sent the price of bread in Guyana went up by 25% overnight. Now, this solution PVP has come up with is, we're going to try and grow wheat in Guyana. You know, they're still trying to grow this wheat a year past.
Yeah.
And look what has happened. The agreement that brought the price of bread back down between Russia and Ukraine has collapsed. Now we expect to see that they're going to see the price of bread go straight up again. You have any wheat? They're saying, they're now going to start some tests on this. They don't take this issue seriously. I personally don't think they even care. The money they put in towards it is chicken feed. And when you ask them what they've done with the $5 billion that they allotted this year, they can barely hold some community projects. You know, it is unbelievable. Now, when the price of bread goes up, as it is likely to because of the war in Ukraine, has unfortunately escalated again. Where is this $5 billion going to be available to cushion this? Or are guys going to have to punish again?
Interesting point of view. You know, as you're the spokesperson for I'd like to give you as much an opportunity to explain certain questions that guys have, because as whether it be for the oil argument or whether it just be for basic knowledge for the citizens, I think what we're not hearing enough of is collaboration or even some sort of universal idea of what this country should be moving towards. And I think this has always been our issue here in Guyana. You get one party that goes into power, PNC or PPP, and they completely change the trajectory of the economy, and they decide that they're doing their own thing, right? And they have their own ideas and they're moving. I'm going to be very honest with you. What I find very interesting about that is, even from what you just said, you guys again are coming with your own plans to head in your own economic trajectory, to do what you think is best. Now, what I want to hear from you guys is, how come none of these political parties are willing to decentralize a little bit of this power, are willing to ensure that the economy, or at least the private sector, can independently stand up and the government is not always the biggest spender, right? Because what we're finding happening is, every time a new government goes in, the whole private sector, and the public sector for that matter, has to head in a different direction. So what we're ending up in is no consistency. So again, the country cannot develop in 5 years. Don't get me wrong, I'll always be the first to say 5 years in a village of 700,000 people is more than enough to make drastic change. But the truth is, unless we have some sort of unification as far as the political idea of Guyana, and I want to talk a little bit more broad-based. Why is it that you think that these two parties, the PNC and the PPP, refuse to work with each other?
Here's really where I think some of the bones of contention really are. it is uncontroversial that we should be aggressive about dealing with the cost of living. Why is that? Why do we have to fight over that? Something like we talked about the audit of Exxon's expenses, the oil and gas expenses, making sure that what was spent is what should have been, that the prices were not inflated, that we're not being charged what we shouldn't be charged, that we're actually checking the books. These are uncontroversial issues. I can't believe that I have to fight to get something like that done.
Right.
And so there is this sense, are these people serious? Are these people serious people, number one? Number two, are they genuine? Because I don't understand how you could adopt an attitude. We don't have to check to see if the costs are inflated. These costs could be inflated by hundreds of millions of US. You don't have to check. That's crazy to me. And so it raises this question as to whether this government is genuine or even serious.
All right.
And what we're seeing, I think, is in today's control. No timeline for when the audit will be finalized, the first audit will be finalized.
Right.
How can you lie down in your bed at night and be confident with the idea that Guyana could be robbed hundreds of millions of US? And we don't need a timeline. We don't need to actually check. This is not controversial.
All right,
That is what's concerned.
Let me ask you a question. Because I don't, we can go deeper and deeper into individual situations, and I could go back and forth and show it more hypocrisy. But what I'd like to do is, I want to ask you a little bit more about, I call Guyana a hyper-political country. We're so small, and every aspect, constitutionally and legally, surrounds the government. Government is politics. So, obviously, everybody is highly in tune with the political situation in Guyana. Now, as you see Guyana moving forward, I'm going to talk to you as a young politician now, right, involved with the opposition. Do you see our current political setting, which has been the same way since our Constitution has been written? Do you see this as a working type of system? Or do you believe constitutional reform is required in order for this country to unify and come together? Do you think that this, race-based politics, even though everyone will argue it's not, my party's not racist. Do you see it as a young politician? Do you see that this is an issue?
Well, I'll say two things. When I moved back to Ghana after I quit Goldman Sachs and came out, the first thing I was involved with was the constitutional reform movement, before everything else. And so I do believe
What year was this?
You pushed me back a while. I got it on a calculator. It was like 2017, 2018.
Okay.
But yes, the first thing I was involved with was the constitutional reform movement, because I believe that we must look at governance and accountability in this country not as a static thing that we must always accept, but as something that we must look to perpetually improve on. And I do believe that we need to improve accountability. We need, one of the things I often say is that I think the legislative branch of government is the weakest branch of government in this country, whereas it should normally be the strongest branch. And so I think that there's a lot more that can be done to decentralize power and so on. So I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. Of course, we are dealing with some kitchen table issues right now because the country is still desperately poor. But that doesn't mean that I don't think that we should be engaging in a continuous reform process, and that we should be identifying areas where there's low-hanging fruit, and in particular areas that will give us the biggest benefit going forward. I will, of course, as someone who is, I think, a bit more clocked in on constitutional reform, have my own perspectives. But I think generally, listen, the PNC and the APNU is in favor of better governance. Now, that is a long conversation. That's a long conversation.
I go back to, they were just in power 3 years ago. How come nothing was put on the table for constitutional reform?
Well, as I said, even though I've been a supporter for a long time, even though I wasn't actively involved in politics, but I was involved in the constitutional reform process, even though that maybe put my political future a little bit in jeopardy. So governance is something that I hold at heart. I know the opposition holds at heart, and an area where there should be continuous conversations around how we're going to continue to improve accountability in this country.
Okay, well, since you're so in tune, as we're running on time, I think we got about 10 minutes. Tell me what some of this low-hanging fruit that you can see that Elson Low can see as an area of constitutional reform that can help develop the country.
All right, well, you have to differentiate between Elson Low and the APNU.
No, that's what I just said, Elson Low.
While I can speak on oil and gas issues, I'm not the constitutional reform what's the word? Spokesperson. But I think first of all, when it comes to the appointment of senior officials like judges, like army personnel, I think that they should go before the National Assembly and face televised questions. And then they should face a vote before they take up those positions.
Okay.
The reason being, I think it is important for us to, first of all, help them to understand they're accountable to the people of Guyana, not to a political party. And second of all, I think there are questions that people should be asked and have to provide answers on.
So, for example, constituency-based representation, you think, for parliamentarians can be an area?
Well, what I believe really should happen is, I think we should have a hybrid system where you may recall that there are what do you call these regional representatives in Parliament. Mm-hmm. Now, I just once asked 100 people on a lark if they could name even one of the Region 4 representatives that are there, and they told me that they couldn't name one of them. And now there's several, and they couldn't even name one. Mm-hmm. That's as big a red flag as you're ever going to see. You know.
But both governments have been ruling under it.
Well, what I'm saying as Elson Low
of course,
is that to me shows that there's a huge problem, because how are you my representative and I don't even know who you are?
Yeah.
That's crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is, I think, an area of low-hanging fruit that we should really focus on, and I think will help to empower our local government organs.
So let me ask you a question, and you know, I'd like the public to really understand why I'm saying this to you, because at the end of the day, as much as anybody wants to argue that PNC did or PPP this, or you know, both sides go after each other, at the end of the day, this country is so narrowly split as far as the voters go that both these organizations, the PPP got 33 seats in Parliament, and the PNC, APNU have 31. Okay, so we are talking about, for the past 3 elections, was it? For the past 15 years, this entire, the government of this country has been decided by 6,000 people, by 10,000 people. Let's just, you know, inflate the number a little bit. So 10,000 people control the balance. Meaning, and what that signifies is that both of these parties, being the APNU and the PPP, represent almost 50% of the country each. All right, almost dead down the middle. And I will say, I think that even more so lately showed in local government elections, where I think all of us were blown away with how well APNU did. Right? So what I'd like to say to that is, if you represent 50% of this country, all right, what is it that you, Elson Low, as a representative of PNC, can stand here and guarantee the people that, or at least your supporters, that you will do come 2025 election for them to vote for you? You guys, what I'm trying to get away from is all of these false promises that are always made from the PPP. We know, 50% raise in salary, blah, 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 public service salary, free UG this, etc., etc. We could go over and over and over on all these false promises, right? They can tell you, and then both of them will say, but look how much other things we did. Now, how is it that we can get some legal standing? How is it that the Guyanese people can hold any of these two parties accountable when it comes to what they said they are going to do when governing this country?
Now, listen, one of the things that I harken back to a lot is, there are people who are issue-based supporters and so on. Really, the reason that I believe in this current leader of the opposition is that he's been willing to listen and been willing to give young people an opportunity and been willing to put forward their policies and ideas. And so, it is not that I speak just because I'm trying to be loud, salary top-ups, cash grants, and these sorts of things, structured cash grants, free UG, but rather that, we've had serious discussions about moving the country forward. And he understands that I support him because he is actually able to look at good policies and is willing to push them forward. So I don't want anyone to run away with the impression that it is just blind loyalty politics, right? But rather that we've got a PNC, we've got a leader who is focused on these issues. And, we have serious discussions around them. We don't always agree, that's okay. But the evidence is that, there's been some new policies, and if you're a young person, this frequently happens, and you say, hey man, these are some issues affecting me. Very frequently, I'll say, all right, let me take a look, and I'll add that to what we're discussing and what we're working on.
All right.
Yeah.
We only have 2 minutes left. Let me ask you a question, and I want a straight answer from you as a young politician. How do you feel about a minority government?
Do you mean the concept, or who's in minority? You want to explain?
So, do you believe that a minority government is necessary to have this country move forward?
I would say there's difference between necessary and useful.
Okay.
I don't think it is necessary. I can see that was it 2011? Yeah. In 2011, that was a dynamic that I think changed a lot of people's perspectives. But I think that with good governance, with people who are genuine and serious, and with an understanding that we have to continue to improve accountability in this country, I think you can make progress. But, and this is what I think we both agree on, it is kind of absurd that basic good governance principles, I mean, that those are the things we're fighting over. I would love to be fighting over tax policy. Yeah. Not over whether or not we should check to see if the country is being robbed. I mean, that's
I hear you. You know what? Right? On that note, I actually agree with you wholeheartedly. And you and I have these conversations all the time. So with that being said, I'd like to thank you. As I told you, the hour runs out in no time here. Yeah. I'd like to thank you for being here. I appreciate you as a young politician, as somebody that has had the courage to get involved. And I say courage because I think it is time that more people start stepping up. And it's the only way you're going to really get that accountability. And I'll say it to anyone, even to the PPP, I don't care who you are, I don't care what side you join, get involved to try and make a difference.
Absolutely.
All right? Because as we can tell right now, all of our futures are dependent on it, even more so right now.
I would say more at this time than any time before. You've now got such huge revenues that you could radically transform the country, or you could continue to have 43% of the people of Guyanese living in poverty.
Absolutely, and most importantly, open your mind politically. At the end of the day, it's one of my quotes. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different result.
What I try to tell people is, if you believe in the PPP's policies and approach, vote with PPP. Don't be voting with PPP just because you happen to know them.
There you go.
If you believe in our policies and approach, vote for us. That's the way that we really.
I even like to narrow it down. If you are happy with your life and what's happening right now, then vote where you voted before, or for who. If you are not happy, if you have, if your life is not developed, if you're not making money like you want, if your family is not, being taken care of the way you want, then you have to vote somewhere else. And I guess people like ourselves open your mind and understand that, you have to do something different to get something different at some point. So hopefully, Elson, nonetheless, I really, really appreciate you coming on.
Glad to be on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll have you on again soon, as more things unfold in our political realm here. But nonetheless, on this beautiful Friday evening, everyone, I'd like to thank you for joining us. As usual, my name is Kian Jabour. I am your host. I'm going to be back here next Friday with... Oh, no, sorry. I'm not going to be back here next Friday. But I'm going to have some other temporary hosts be on. And I hope that you guys have learned something today and seen things from a different perspective. And that, at bare minimum, is all I can ask to do here on Apolitically in Craig Guyana. So, once again, thank you for joining me and have a wonderful Friday evening. Take care.
Thank you for watching our program. See you right back here, same place, same time. And remember, hold the line of battle, comrades. Our victory is sure.